There's so many linkages between sleep, anxiety, stress, like, and then in the real world setting, right? Hormones are up and down, right? So I think we're still learning. And I think that's where your company is doing all these things that are interesting to help us decipher.
Welcome to Radicle Perspectives, where science, strategy, and innovation converge in the nutraceuticals industry. We break down the latest clinical research, market trends, and consumer insights. If you're driving innovation in dietary supplements, this is your go-to for what's next and why it matters.
Hi, I'm Helene Thorogood, co-founder and exec chair of Radicle Science, and your host today. In this episode of Radicle Perspectives, we're thrilled to welcome May Yamada-Lifton, CEO of Maypro Group, and my friend, for a fascinating discussion on everything from achieving work-life balance as a wellness leader to uncovering the secrets of Japanese longevity. With over 20 years of leadership experience spanning the pharma, data science, and finance industries, May brings a wealth of insights to the table. We'll dive into how Eastern and Western health philosophies intersect, the science driving innovation in supplements, and what the future holds, from AI to new breakthroughs. So let's get started. May, you wear a lot of hats: wife, mom, incredible athlete, and CEO. Which one is the hardest to keep on straight?
Palin, I think the one is wife. So the reason why is everything else you can outsource help, but you cannot, and you do not want to outsource the help on your wife job. I think I also, and the reason why I bring spouse up is because I work with my spouse in the family business. So one of the things that we make sure we do is find boundaries, work-life boundaries, so that we can make sure we have a great relationship, but also work well together.
I can certainly understand it. And having seen you guys do the business dance together, having been in meetings and dinners with you guys, I think you're pulling it off very, very well. So I'd say definitely kudos to you both.
Thank you.
So continue with the work-life balance theme. Does it actually exist, or is it just a myth created to make us feel badly?
Yeah, I actually got trained in this. I was really lucky to spend a lot of my career at working women-friendly companies such as Pfizer, and even at Maypro. One of the things that happens is there is no such thing as balance sometimes. So what typically will happen is everything it happens at the same time. So sometimes life overtakes you. Sometimes work overtakes you. And so what's going to happen is if you're 100% capacity, you may end up giving less than 100 to some of these categories, right? So what's going to happen is you will do it for a short term and then you'll burn out. And so one of the things that we were taught is, if you're trying to be the perfect mom at 120%, you're going to have to give yourself some grace, because you're not going to be there for every little event or every thing that is important to you or socially told you should do as a mother. And you're going to have to say to yourself, I'm not going to be 120% at work. I'm not going to be 120% at home. If you can do 70 at each, you probably did much better than a 1970s mom and also a husband, right? So I think you got to give yourself some credit. And I think make choices. I think one of the things that helps is people who do not like that, who really want to spend the time to focus on one thing at a time, they do. And I think that's also something I try to make sure people know that's a choice. It's a respected choice, and don't make people feel bad about it, because we have a long life. We can come in and come back in careers. I try to stay in is what I always say. But work-life balance is difficult. And if it starts getting into your health or your relationships, you really should reconsider.
I love that, May. And I think we're very aligned. I look at it as a dynamic optimization model. Whatever your priorities have to change depending on what's really pulling you. And you got to also have fun along the way. We're here to actually be our best selves. So moving on into the leadership role. And I would love to hear about how you're describing your leadership philosophy. I mean, inspirational coach. Obviously, we collaborate on a WIN mentorship committee, the tough love mentor, somewhere in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me is I'm coach, I would say the high standard does come in. And so when you say like, tough love mentor, I'm probably more a high standard, coach. I think something that I like to do is have people enjoy their achievement, their growth. There is like a happiness formula, and people tend to really appreciate achievement, but also growing others, and teaching others. Those makes people happier. And so one of the things I try to do even at Maypro is we have a learning culture and an achievement culture where we're all also giving back and teaching each other. And I think that's something that comes definitely from Steve, the founder, but also it comes naturally. It comes naturally to what I call the mom, to when you feel that you're building an organization that the next generation can continue to teach the next generation to grow. That's great for me. And also to be aspirational. So I think, it's a very female leadership style. I think it's nurturing a bit, but I also think it's a coaching style.
That's perfect. And it's been wonderful to see the WIN mentorship committee grow so well, and so many people benefiting so much under your leadership. I've really enjoyed being part of it as one of the mentors. So I've absolutely observed everything you're talking about. So on that note, we're both female execs. So do you think it's different to be a female exec, or do you think is leadership just leadership at the end of the day?
Ellen, I really love to hear from you on this one, but I'll tell you quickly what I think. I think the base criteria is similar. I was told, and I really think it's true, clear direction. And also the why is helpful. So strong communication. And when that's communication, people tend to emphasize speaking, but I've learned over time, it's listening and understanding people's needs. So this is very important, when you're driving change, driving different things, moving forward. Communications, very important. I would say that there is a different expectation from women that gets later on top of that. So I definitely have not stopped getting feedback on my physical looks. I did not recognize that dyeing my hair was my biggest requirement for my job as CEO. It is very, I get more judgment on my glasses, my hair, and different physical things that I never imagined were more important. But I think people do look for visual from women. They like healthy. So there's a lot more things that are involved. I think that calmness is something that people love from leaders. And I think that, the communication is important for that, right? So I'm going to stop here, but I think definitely the visionary mode, people expect less from women. They're not normally used to seeing that. And so that's something that I wonder, with women, how can they do that? Being the visionary. I think they're more seen as nurturing, caring, giving, growing, and clear, more operational. So I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I think we can be all of the above. We are different. It's not more or less, we're different. So I believe in just leaning into our strengths, being intuitive, being that natural, like creator, because we are like being that divine feminine. So I think when we lean into our actual strengths, some of these elements actually really grow. And that divine feminine, that creator, I think is very much a visionary element as well. So I do believe in leaning into our visionary. Let's surprise them and show that we can be all of the above, not some of the above. And at the end of the day, I do believe leadership is leadership. We all have different styles. But again, it's important for us to, all of us as female leaders, to show that it's about being the best leader there is, not being the best female leader there is. So that's a very, very important piece. And I think, thank you for showing up and embodying what needs to happen as an example to all women leaders out there.
Thanks so much. It's all about different role models. And I think that's the most important thing about the mentorship committee is to have different role models for different kind of people. And I love that. And I love that you're also with us in that journey.
It takes all of us, that's for sure. So it takes a village always, and it's wonderful to have this conversation. So on that note, I also love your amazing background with Japan, the magical Japan, the blue zones, the botanicals, etc. So Maypro was founded by a Japanese immigrant, your dad. How has that shaped the company's DNA?
I'll tell you this. We are definitely strongly culturally based, have a Japanese culture. So there's a lot of things we do called Maypro philosophy sessions where we talk about cultural ways and working. So when there isn't a how, we have some tenets on how, the best way to translate is like values. But for example, we'll be doing a session this upcoming week on be creative all the time. It's one of the cultural things we hold valuable. And a lot of the times, when you have limited resources as a startup, I think, Helen, this, you got to get creative, but of course, with ethical, with boundaries, right? So we definitely talk a lot about different characteristics that are actually quite universal. And the Japanese side probably comes from the group. So we typically tend to try to make the group successful, and belonging is important. And you bring happiness by belonging and growing as a group. We have individualism, but we also try to grow together. So these are maybe the quickest way for me to explain some of the Japanese culture in Maypro. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more. We do a lot of philosophy education, taken from a famous Japanese philosopher called Inamori, who built a lot of Japanese companies in Japan. So those are embedded. But one of the things that I noticed is the Now Food founder, he had his own tenets. And I looked at them and I looked at ours and I was like, ours is slightly Buddhist. His is more Christian, but they're very similar. These are tenets on how to run a company.
I love that. That's awesome. And I think finding and doing those layers of extraction and seeing those similarities and seeing that we have more in common than we have different is just a beautiful way to bring all of us together. So great segue to the next question, which is the secret sauce to Eastern medicine that Western medicine is still catching up on, and how do we integrate both? Again, I believe in a world of and, not the Eastern or Western, but how do we actually blend both of them? So
yeah, Pelin, absolutely. I'm definitely always been an and person. What I find is there's just a length of history in Asia of working with different things from the earth that people have found to work for them. That basically are the ingredients that Maypro has made, a history introducing to the West. So HCC, it is a complex from shiitake and mushrooms fermented, that was known for cancer. Of course, you don't say use this for cancer, but it was known for as a traditional ingredient as a food. And now it is one of our best-selling immune supplements. And one of the things that we as Americans and science are learning is the mechanisms were just unexplained, and our bodies were basically much more used to working to be stimulated in an immune, innate, and adaptive system from nature, right? So I think a lot of these things we have found have made its way into supplements so that Americans can also bring it in to the way they live in their diets.
Excellent. Couldn't agree with you more. And we are part of nature. We should not extract ourselves from it. The more we do, I think the more, the less well we get. So I definitely agree. And that actually takes us to the next topic, the very trending topic of blue zones. Japan is, of course, home to some of the world's blue zones. So what are they doing right that the rest of us aren't?
I think really simply, they do walk more. Okay. They just walk more. And that physical movement is important for mental health. I think the second thing is they do drink green tea, maybe 10 to 11 times a day. And, we're extracting L-theanine, but it's in there, it's in the green tea.
What about my coffee? Is this bad for me?
Well, the thing about caffeine in tea is it's counterbalanced by the L-theanine, right? So when you're exhausted, it actually doesn't make you jumpy. It actually just brings you up a little bit. And when you're down, do you know what I'm saying? It's actually regulating. And so green tea, I do think with the antioxidant, it's part of their diet. Nobody ever gives it up. So they get a lot of hydration bizarrely from green tea as well, right? So I think these are just some basic things that they do. I think they also have managing stress norms with groups. And I think they have go to hot springs.
So back to business. Maypro has been at the forefront of bringing functional ingredients to the US. What are the biggest cultural differences in how Japan and the US approach wellness? And you've been on both sides.
Right. So what we found is we typically represent ingredients that have done very well in Asia. And what's interesting is the cross-cultural differences in what people's needs are, or just lack of awareness of the need. It's not there yet. I would say that, I think I talked about HCC before. One of the most interesting things for us is we got patient testimonials that it was helping them manage their HPV. Now, that is not something we were hearing about in Japan, right? But we end up in doing a study with University of Texas, and we're helping find this data that it can help clear chronic HPV that, was not going away. So it's quite actually like, wow. So it always starts with real world evidence. And then we try to do a study later because we're trying to help you to clarify that it works for many people. I think we work with oregano, which the tradition was the princess of China would use it for her beautiful skin, for her clarity of her blood flow, and in Japan they would use it for so we have a product called Oligoderm on the Quality of Life website for skin, clear skin, and in Japan, of course, pale skin is nice, but in the West, of course, they love the idea of clear skin, right? So the way you think about it is different. And the companies that actually like the oligonol the most are companies like Nutrabolt, who wanted to have it for pre-workout, for the blood flow, right? So the usage of what we think if somebody wants it for may not be what an American embraces it for, because an American will be like, wow, I love the effect. It makes your blood tingle, your blood flow so good. Your arms and fingers, like if you do these pictures, are the blood's flowing. So they love the blood flow for different reasons, for example. So we have a lot of these ingredients that have really learned a lot about cultural differences over time. We have a meal peptide for good cardiovascular, in Japan, hypertension support. In America, it's for pump. Vasodrive, we call it Vasodrive, and people want it for pump. So it's a different goal and it's a different need, but it works for people, right? So these are some things that were really fascinating for us. Everything one-on-one. And I think we have a lot of things exciting for cognition because Japan's aging faster than we are in America. So they have a lot of cognitive things. And how do we sell it here? For e-gaming. Because it's just a different need, right? So it's really fascinating how
it really is the cultural differences and the use cases. It's the same mechanism, but the use case may apply very differently based on what people look at as a priority. So that's super fascinating. I love this. Yeah,
it's really cool for me to be in the middle, helping cross translate the science to the needs for for different people.
Amazing. Some of these ingredients we're talking about, you can get them from various places, but Maypro gets them from Japan. So are the Japanese, manufacturers, suppliers, are they doing something uniquely different? And if so, is the rest of the world taking notes?
I think we're one of the early companies that, of course, there's the quality control, right? The consistency. So the reason that's important is, for example, you can't do the studies if the ingredient is not consistent, right? So I think the fermentation of this, shiitake, combination extract is actually drug level. It's like, biologics. It's always the same. And so you can do 30 human clinical studies. It's not like we're chopping up some shiitake in the backyard. You know what I'm saying? It is always the same. It's standardized. I think the other part, for example, why we work with a lot of postbiotics, again, it's stable. So you can do studies. And that's why it's also useful, why we love to have a lot of lots of probiotics you want it to be the same, right? So these are different things that people do, a lot more standardization, quality control, that they're always the same effectiveness. I think the studies come out based on that because we're able to constantly work with doctors and universities. They come to us and say, hey, can you explain to me how this might actually work in this immune cascade was not known in America, not discussed really till like the 2000s. We've been selling HCC from like the 90s, and we were finding things, but the immune cascade was not understood, right? So I think people want to do the studies to understand how, because there was not enough people, not enough patents and drug money, they couldn't do these use studies, but while they do these integrative studies, they're learning more. And, we work with you, Radicle, to do this kind of thing as well. We knew it works. The supplier, Tokiwa, we've been working together for many years. We knew that Chinese medicine-derived ingredients could work. Venetron could work for anything from they had some studies in PMS, but Japanese people, their PMS symptoms are a little different from Americans. They have a lot of different stress and anxiety conditions. So I feel really brave that we worked with you guys to say, let's do it. Let's show it in 400 Americans and with their conditions and see what's similar, what's different. Let's show it with the pharma kind of metrics, So I think this kind of research together to help. And we had enough people proof in Asia and enough Japanese, some studies. So we wanted to make it in something that others can take a look through. And I think when we're still learning, Palin, we're still learning, right? There's so many linkages between sleep, anxiety, stress, hormonal imbalances. Like there's just all so linked in here. And then in the real world setting, right? Hormones are up and down, right? So I think we're still learning. And I think that's where your company is doing all these things that are interesting to help us decipher.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure working with you guys on the Venetron study. Like you said, not only are we getting like stat sig to be placebo, clinically meaningful results, but seeing all these different subpopulation differences. I mean, I think that's like one size does not fit all. And like we're seeing that in your results of how different groups are benefiting differently, as well as understanding the effects on other comorbid conditions. I mean, it's been a fascinating journey and I'm so excited as to where that's going. And you guys have been phenomenal partners. So we appreciate you guys as partners, very, very curious partners, I would say.
Yes, of course. Especially, again, my clinical trial development experience has me like, I want this to be the best. Palin, you're doing a great thing here with this company, bringing standards and things. But of course, we recognize that the supplement sector is not the same financial structure. We recognize that, there's also differences in people, right? And that's what we want to celebrate in our sector is not everybody's an average. So help us decipher. Right.
That's for sure. I think that just the old clinical trial paradigm is great for safety, but in terms of understanding, like not just it works, but how does it work for me? How does it work for my husband? How does it work for my mother? Like we need to actually understand those personalized differences and these larger studies that we're doing together and with many other partners as well is, I think, going to really change how consumers look at supplements and hopefully trust it. And it's going to change, I think, the conversation in the supplement market because supplements used to be all about marketing claims, but I think it's really moving into clinical proof and hopefully getting more and more into some of these personalized differences as well.
I think we are prioritizing always the clinical research. We've always had some clinical research, usually in Japan and humans. I think, but as mentioned, like when the claims are different, the needs are different, we may have to do more. I think the other part of it also is trying to help our companies and customers. You also deal with the practicalities of their business models, right? They can't do the multi-million-dollar studies and wait for success, maybe, right? So I think, I think that's where we're trying to put our creative brains and how can we, and that's why working with companies like yours as well. How can you help in a way that works within this business model that we have? I do think as the standards get set up, you can do a lot more as well, right? So clinical trials, in the US government, it took a lot of sector help as well to set up standards and help think through how to make it effective. Of course, you can't be guiding it completely, but like there's definitely an interaction dialogue. And I think doing it well is important so that you can guide the dialogue in a way that works pro consumer, works pro safety, works, you got to work with all the different situations, also business realities. Right. So like, I'll not be perfectly straight up. Like I remember the FDA told the rare disease company I was that they had to do this huge study. And we're like, there aren't that many patients. Love to, but they're not that many. Right. So sometimes you need to have that dialogue. And what is it for our sector? Right. So these are the things that probably will advance. To be engaged in that is important for every company.
Absolutely. We have to maintain and if anything, up the rigor so that the data is relevant, but we need the speed so that we can iterate and innovate. And we obviously need to lower the barriers to access by making it affordable and have enough data to make sure we understand those personalized differences. So again, back to that world of and, you can't just pick one or the other. We need all of the above for it to be relevant and actually usable for as many companies as possible today. And for consumers to, I think, continue to trust the industry more and more. So I'm glad we're in this together.
Yeah.
On that note, where is the nutraceutical industry headed? More science, more AI, or something we haven't even thought about yet?
Well, I'll tell you this. I had done a lot of digital health investing. So, I did a lot of things like thinking about personalization. One of the things, though, that I personally am more fascinated by is just the generational AI. And I think I talked to you about this, is how it can help us just work faster and better with our customers. So I think the working with the, consumers and people who are medically sick, the text analytics can tell if someone's mentally ill in 30 seconds. It's already there. Like the analytics are already out there. Like it's pretty scary actually. So I think people know a lot already about medical health, which is wealth. And actually, I think a lot of these tools are more careful not to scare people. Right? Because the self-diagnosis can get to the next level of scary, right? Because, it is still guessing, probabilistically guessing the Gen AI tools. So before it was Google search drove you down the scary pool. Next, that Gen AI could. So I think there's a lot more moderation behind the scenes going on. So I'm not quite sure where that'll go, actually, the personalization with Gen AI because of these risks and fears. But I do think the operationalization is great. So I'm trying to use chatbots within my company to help us get to their customers' needs better. How do I figure out better? What does this company actually really want? I've done a lot of explanations to them on their ingredients, but actually what are their needs here? And thinking through with them, also even helping them plan better, right? So our ingredients are there, but there's a whole story around it. And does it fit their business needs? So I'm working a lot on thinking about using it for brainstorming tools and collaborating out there so that, they can do their job in a way that they can succeed as well. So that's where our sector, maybe we have a lot more, launch failures, right? So maybe we can help a little bit more, be helping think through together with them as not just ingredients, but also a brainstorming partner.
Yeah, given how fast things are evolving, I wonder how we would both answer that question 6 months from now, let alone a year or two from now. So it's interesting times for all of us to pay attention to because there is a lot of power. That's for sure. It's how we use it and how we adapt to it and how we actually collaborate on it. So very interesting times for sure on the possibilities.
Yeah, Palin, I do think one thing that tech, adjustments is the investors are not exactly with American middle person that might be taking a supplement. So I think really listening, feeling and someone said, you have all these anxiety tools, but actually money causes anxiety and the price of eggs has caused anxiety, so we're creating all these newfangled things, but actually people are more worried about simple things that can we help with, right? And I have a lot of supplements for anxiety and they're doing really well, because people need the love. They want the love. They want the care. They want they want something that someone else, told them that worked for them. Right. So I think technology is good, but how do we help with technology, these inner needs that people are not getting satisfied?
No, very true. It's about raising that bottom up so that we are actually at that's to me the most important part of democracy is like making sure that the common denominator is as high as possible. And I think that comment you just made is very, very important. So on that note, what is the one piece of advice, given these changing times and all the movement across the board, including AI, but certainly not limited to it? What piece of advice would you give to the next generation of wellness leaders?
Yeah, I really thought about this. Because my father started this business nearly 50 years ago, I grew up in it. And it is a big family business. The sector is like one big family business because we're in it generations, because a lot of the ingredients do come from the earth. So they're farmers, there's different people involved. And one of the things that I think is the heart of the sector, the supplement sector, is the movement to help take control of our health with nature. Right? Because I think we love medicine, but we also, with capitalistic society of getting food out there faster, the Turkish fruit, it tastes so much better than my American fruit. We really work too fast to get rich. And then our basic food supply, we're not doing great, right? So that's the mission. How do we help ourselves? The drugs have helped us now live double length. Now we got to constantly blend in that nature, right? And what it's taught us for over a longer time period than capitalism has, right? So I think let us help each other. Let us grow. Let us remember that, like that heart, because that's what the core of this money will come into this sector. Money will leave the sector, but don't forget that heart, that it is a bunch of people trying to protect other people. That's what this sector has been always. And there will always be somebody capitalizing it. But I think that's one of the things that we try is to not regulate, from policing, but more from hey, what are we doing this for? Right. So I think that's something that I'd say anybody in this space, it's not just a trend. It is definitely been a long movement of generations.
It's an essential, it's a must have. And I think, just going back to one of our earliest points, the point you made about heart and leading with heart and really remembering that's one of the things I think as female leaders, we can always bring back. Because I think we live and breathe as moms, that just kind of becomes how we operate. So bringing that back into business, bring that back as to the why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing what we're doing so that it is in tune with the environment. It is in tune with the community. I think those are elements that as female leaders, we can lean into because it just comes more natural to us in some ways, I think. So it's a strength.
Yes.
Now, probably a lot of people are wondering, this is the final and kind of the fun question. What is in your supplement cabinet as we speak?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm training for figure skating, believe it or not, world championship in end of June. Yeah. So I'm taking oligonol, right? Because that I need, if it's in a NutriBullet product, I should be taking it, and it also has, I think sucrosomial magnesium, good for sleep and stress. I think these tariffs are definitely sending me in all sorts of directions. So we have the sucrosomial, higher absorption magnesium. Mm-hmm. So these are two things that are really important. We don't sell ashwagandha, but I do love ashwagandha. It's a good ingredient. Lots of studies, so those are, I think, the three things that I would mention. Our friends, oligonol, magnesium, sucrosomial magnesium, and some ashwagandha.
Well, best of luck with your training. I've seen some of your videos. You rock. So it's pretty amazing what you're doing on the ice rink as well as what you're doing in the boardroom. May, you are an inspiration and it's been such a delight chatting with you. I can't wait to see you again soon in one of our conferences and spend some quality time together. And I appreciate this time together so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Radicle Perspectives, where science meets strategy in nutraceuticals. If you're enjoying these conversations, don't forget to follow and share to keep the momentum going. We'll catch you on the next episode.